I have found out, or rather I have clarified 4 issues. One is that there were no overprice that were done on the purchase of masks. And this was according to the testimony of no less than Chairman Mike Aguinaldo himself, that the report of the COA did not even mention any overpricing of the mask. And this statement was corroborated by his subordinate. I forgot the name. It was a female staff. But anyway, it was clearly established that the masks were not overpriced. Number 2, the procurement process was legal and even went over and above what was required under the Bayanihan Act. It was also established during that hearing, or clarified during that hearing, that the procurement of the mask using the Bayanihan 1 Act was exempted from Republic Act 9184. So therefore, the negotiated procurement under emergency cases was purely legal on that matter. Number 3, there are no ghost deliveries. Goods were delivered and payment was made after the delivery. The several resource persons testified that there were certificate of inspections, there were inspectors from the different agencies who inspected the goods. And number 4, the local manufacturers were not boxed out of the procurement of the face mask. In fact, one of the resource persons, I think it was Yusik Lau, showed us that there were 17 suppliers who supplied PPEs, and there were 8 suppliers who supplied face masks, contrary to the perception that formally cornered or got the bulk of the 42 billion pesos. Now, I'll now go to the questioning. Do we have a representative from DTI? May I ask Comsec Marivic if we have a representative from DTI?
Yes, Your Honor, we have.
Anybody from DTI?
Chairman.
Your Honor, I'm here. I'm Claire Cabuchan from DTI, sir.
Yes, Yusek. You're Yusek, di ba?
ASEC, sir. ASEC po.
Okay, sorry. Anyway, ASEC, one of the duties and functions of the DTI is, or rather, the mandate of DTI, one of the mandates, is to monitor prices of basic commodities in times of calamities or emergencies. In March 2020, that was the onset of the pandemic crisis, di ba? Now, did you ever make or did you set a price ceiling for face masks during that time? Kasi di po ba ang DTI gumagawa tayo ng price ceiling kagaya ng isda, karne, or bigas pag merong kalamidad, hindi po ba? Hindi po ba ganun pong ginagawa ninyo? Nagsiset kayo ng price ceiling?
Your Honor, under the Price Act, the DTI is one of the implementing agencies. But for the masks, it was the Department of Health, Your Honor, that set the ceiling for masks.
So, on March of 2020, wala po kayong ginawang price ceiling or market price study of masks on March 2020.
Your Honor, actually, DTI started monitoring the prices of masks in January because of the Taal explosion, sir. So when the COVID pandemic also set in around March, we continued monitoring not only for the Taal eruption, but also because of COVID. So our Fair Trade Enforcement Bureau has been monitoring the supply and the prices of masks in the market, but it was the Department of Health that set the ceiling
What was
for
your
masks.
price monitor at that time?
Sir, for the monitored prices, our Fair Trade Enforcement Bureau had first their monitored prices, sir, were I think for N95 120 pesos. For certain suppliers, what's a range of 105 to 120. And for N88, it was also below what were the world prices for N88, sir.
Let me clarify again.
Yes, sir.
You said that at that time, the price that you were able to monitor for face mask was around 100 to 120 pesos. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Around March, let me check my notes again, sir. For N95, our monitored prices were, yes, 105 to 120.
Okay, thank you, Asek.
Yes.
So, my colleagues, clearly, the price of 27.72, 27 pesos and 72 centavos that were supplied by formally was way, way below the price, the monitored price of DTI. Hindi po ba, Asek? Kasi yung price monitor ninyo is 100 to 105, even 120 pesos. So could you say that the price of Farmally when they supplied it at 27 pesos was reasonable enough? That's only one-third or less than one-third of the price that yung price monitor na ginawa ng DTI, hindi po ba?
Your Honor, I was referring to N95. But if the masks were N88, it would be lower. But based on our monitoring reports and the study conducted by the Consumer Policy and Advocacy Bureau of the DTI Consumer Protection Group, the prices that have been monitored, the monitored prices and the suggested retail price set by DOH are lower than the market price and even world market prices, Your Honor.
Anyway, thank you. But it is very clear that the supplied masks were lower than the price that you monitored. Hindi po ba?
Yes, Your Honor.
My next question would be, thank you, Asek. Thank
Thank
you
you very much, sir.
My next question would be for DOH. To Secretary Duque na lang.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Good morning.
Yes, Mr. Chair. During the last hearing, we learned that in 2016, or rather in 2015, in 2016, the DOH, but this was not during your tenure, I believe, the DOH bought PPEs and the amount was 3,500 pesos and 3,800 pesos per set. Can you confirm this, Secretary Duque?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
Well, the method of purchase at that time, this PPE is worth 3,500 and 3,800 per set. Was it through negotiated procurement or did it go through competitive public bidding?
It did go through the competitive public bidding, Mr. Chairman.
What about the specifications of the 2015 PPEs compared to the specifications that we bought, or rather your agency or DBMPS bought on March of 2020? Ano pong diferensya nun? Was
Well,
the same?
well, the price-wise, mas mababa yung binili. nung
Yes, I understand that it was
2020.
about 1,900
Yes, thereabout.
compared to 3,800. So it was 50% half the price of the PPEs that were purchased in 2015, in spite of the fact that it went through a public bidding, pero yung March 2020 na binili po natin went through a negotiated procurement. So, taking into consideration, mas mababa pa rin yung through negotiated procurement. What I meant is the specifications. Pareho po ba? Kasi pinag-ano natin, bakit mas mahal yung 2015 at saka bakit mas mura yung 2020? Pareho ba yung component, yung one set, ilang pieces po ba yung 2015, ilang pieces yung 2020 na binili natin na PPE?
Mr. Chairman, the 2015 procurement had only 8 components, while the 2020 procurement had about 9 to 10 components, no? And in particular, the apron, which is not found in the 2015 procurement, was included in the 2020 procurement. And also the face shield was also included in lieu of goggles. So you're right, the components are more for the 2020 procurement, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman.
So mas marami po talaga yung component nung binili natin na PPE in March 2020 compared to the PPEs that we bought in 2015, in 2016, and more than that, kahit na mas marami pa yung component ng 2020, kalahati lang po ang presyo, hindi po ba?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. That is accurate.
Well, as I've said earlier, we have
10
already
minutes.
clarified, ilang minutes lang? 10. We have already clarified that there were no overpricing, and then the government on the purchase of the PP was at an advantage because mura na, mas marami pang component compared to the 2015 purchases. Maraming salamat po, Secretary Duque. My next questions will be directed to Attorney Leong, Attorney Warren Leong, the Deputy Ombudsman. Are you on board?
Good afternoon, Your Honors. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. We already know that the procurement of the COVID-19 masks under the BNN1 Act was done through the negotiated procurement under Emergency Act. Hindi po ba? Mr. Chairman?
Yes, it was done through Bayanihan 1. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Now, under Republic Act 11469, required ba yung suppliers should submit their articles of incorporation and general information sheet to the procuring entity, in this case, the BMPS?
No, Mr. Chairman, it is not required. And even in negotiated procurement under emergency cases, that is RA 9184, it is also not required, Mr. Chairman. I must
Hindi
point out.
required yun. Pero, so, yung Pharmalid, did you still require them to submit in spite na hindi naman required sa Bayanihan 1 Act? Pinasubmit pa ba ninyo? Hindi na.
Hindi na po, Mr. Chairman. That
Okay.
would run counter to the need to procure it fastest possible way, Your Honor.
In Republic Act 9184, one of the bases for awarding the contract or for the pre-qualification rather of a certain bidder is the net financial contracting capacity to show whether the contractor or the supplier is capable financially. Hindi po ba? Yung dito sa pagbili natin ng mask, did you require or did you compute the net financial contracting capacity of the supplier?
No more, Mr. Chairman, Your Honor, because net NFCC, you're talking about NFCC, that's a requirement only in regular competitive bidding. Even in emergency procurement in RA 9184, that is not a requirement. Dito sa Bayanihan 1, lalo na po, hindi po yan siya requirement, Your Honor.
So,
Hindi po
the supplier did not submit articles of incorporation, did not submit net financial contracting capacity, or rather, you did not compute any more than NFCC dahil hindi naman po required. Dahil exempted yung sa Republic Act 9184, yung funds using funds sa Bayanihan 1 Act, hindi po ba?
Correct, Mr. Chairman. That statement is correct.
What about the supplier's line of credit from a universal or commercial bank? Did you require them also?
Wala pong ganyan sa emergency procurement, Your Honor, both in RA 9184 and in Bayanihan 1, because the paramount concern is to address the emergency immediately po. So kung sinong merong available, bibili po talaga tayo, Mr. Chair.
Hindi na rin sila nag-submit ng kasi ito yung usual eh. These are the usual documents, requirements in any competitive public bidding, no?
That is correct.
Did you require them to submit a statement of its single largest completed contract? Wala na rin.
No, Mr. Chairman, because experience is not a requirement. Yeah, you're talking about experience there in SLCC. That is not
Yes.
a requirement. Emergency
It's not a
procurement.
requirement, no?
No.
What about yung audited financial statements of the suppliers? Pinasubmit niyo sila, hindi rin.
Hindi rin po. There's no capitalization requirement in emergency procurement, both in Bayanihan 1 and Republic Act 9184, Your Honor.
So what do you think is the reason why all of these requirements, documents, hindi na pinasubmit dun sa negotiated procurement? It's the fact that it was exempted, hindi po ba?
Opo, and the fact po na meron tayong emergency, saving lives po ang paramount concern. So kung kailangan nating i-address yung emergency, bibili po talaga tayo agad, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, because the time is of the essence, hindi po ba? Kaya tayo, the provision of the exemption of RA 9184, nilagay talaga ng Kongreso doon so that we could give the government the immediate response. Because if we go through the normal process, tatagal po yan ng 2 hanggang 3 buwan, hindi po ba? Dadaan kayo ng advertisement, dadaan kayo ng pre-procurement, mga pre-bidding, then after that, post-qualification. It will take the normal process of procuring a good or service from accredited suppliers will take about 2 to 3 months, hindi po ba? Kasi advertise mo pa yan. Lalo na if it's in billion of pesos, i-advertise mo pa yan sa National Daily. But all of this, itong mga requirements, tinanggal na nga po natin sa Bayanihan 1A dahil nga emergency in nature. Importante po, hindi po ba? Madali. Okay. Now may I ask again Secretary Duque? Secretary Duque, are you still on board? Secretary Duque?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just went to the restroom.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Secretary Duque, we already know that the 42 billion pesos, was it 42, 44 billion? 42 billion pesos was transferred to the BMPS, no? But it was DOH who requested for the purchase of the face mask, hindi po ba?
Yes, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman.
Ilan ho ang ni-request natin for the immediate response to be distributed to
4
the
minutes.
frontliners, ilan ho ang ni-request ninyo sa DBMPS on March 2020 or April?
I'm just looking at my records, Mr. Chairman. On March 26, we had downloaded an agency procurement request in the amount of 1.8 billion pesos. That was on March 26. This is for the PPE, personal protective equipment, Your Honor. And then subsequently, the March 30, 2020, we downloaded another APR. This is for 84.9 million, thereabouts, for PPEs as well. And so there have been subsequent downloading of procurement requests from the DOH to the PSDBM, Your Honor.
And the supply secretary, di ba nag-request po tayo kayo ng March? So on supplies, actually dumating naman po ng April, hindi po ba?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Kung let's say, for purposes of discussion, because sabi ko nga, immediate response, that is why we had this Bayan in One Act, exempted from 9184. Sa tingin po ninyo, nakatulong ba yung pagdating on time ng tong PPE at mask sa pag-distribute sa mga frontliners? Were we able to ikangang lessen the infections among the frontliners? Kasi hindi po ba binigyan natin to sa frontliners dun sa on-time delivery of the supplies of mask and PPE?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you are absolutely correct. If this did not come on time, then we would have a lot more infection, higher transmission rate among our healthcare workers. That would have led to the undue collapse of the health system. Because can you imagine, without the PPEs, we would have more patients either suffering from severe and COVID infection, and would have warranted an intubation. We would have more deaths. Many of our healthcare workers would have been in isolation and quarantine. Wala na po mag-aalaga ng mga pasyente. Wala na po makakapangalaga ng both COVID and non-COVID patients. So malaking tulong po talaga ito, Mr. Chairman.
So tama po yun, Mr. Chair. So kung na-deliver ng mga July or August yung mga mask and PPE, so malamang siguro, Mr. Chair or Secretary Duque, malamang nag-collapse ng health system natin, hindi po ba?
You are absolutely correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Chair, since I do not have time anymore, I will set for another the next hearing or next round.
Thank you.
Several questions. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice.